Then I'm gonna start recording, and Sarah, thank you for reminding me to record. That is very much appreciated. Okay, so without further ado, let's dive into the answers that we got. The first question was simply, why did you leave us? And I've built this word cloud out of all the words that people answered, just as a visual thing for us to sort of think about it. And the bigger word is in this word cloud, the more often it appeared in an answer. So very few people said appropriate or Monday, but lack and time are very big words. Priorities, relocating, expectations, financial, maybe it's competing priorities, right? These two could have come together, or other constraints. So this is sort of setting the stage for what to expect in the next couple of slides. It gives you a little first impression on the topics that are top of mind when people leave Rotary. So let's dive into the answers in more detail. For why did you leave us, we gave him about, I think 6 or 7 or 8, maybe even 9 predefined answers, and then an option to just write in something. And not surprisingly, those predefined answers were ticked off by a lot of people, but we also got a lot of write-ins. And the detailed textual answers that were written in would fill 17 slides. So I'm happy to share the entire document with all of you after this meeting so you can look at them later on. But the most important answer was lack of time. And if you think about how participation in a Rotary Club really is just, I don't know, an hour and a half a week, it's fascinating to me to see that lack of time is the most important reason why people leave Rotary. And could that have to do with the fact that some of our clubs are still putting too much of a focus on attendance? And could this be something that we change in the future, that people don't need to commit to a lot of time if they want to be doing good in the world and be Rotary Club members? Obviously, number 2, relocating to new community is very clear. When they move, they leave a Rotary Club. So that's not a big surprise there. One would expect that to be near the top. Competing priorities is another interesting one. Is that the same as lack of time, or is that something different? That may be something we can discuss in our breakout rooms later on. Financial constraints clearly is a factor for a lot of people. That was like 18.5% of respondents who picked that answer. And then we have a couple of unmet expectations. And I'm going to group 5, 6, and 8 together because it's really unmet expectations. If you add them up, you also get to a pretty big number. You get to about 22% of unmet expectations, either service expectations or networking expectations or fellowship expectations. But then we have our DI topic that is in our minds nowadays in our district. And indeed, 7 people, or 8.6%, left because they did not feel included in their Rotary clubs. So if you are already on the DI journey with your club and already are working on getting the district governor DI citation, that's maybe something really good, because that can totally influence member retention, as we see from these answers. So we asked a follow-up question: if people moved, right? If they moved, did they join a new club in the area that they moved to? And only 11% said yes. 34% said no, and the rest did not answer the question, or wrote not applicable because they didn't move. So we can ignore those 53%. If you have moved, would you like us to contact the Rotary Club in your new place of residence to notify them that you're interested in joining? 10% said yes. So that's consistent with the 11% that also already joined the club. So that's really nice to see. And then we just for fun, we asked, well, where's the new place of residence? Because we wanted to know where did people move when they left our district. 28% went to Tampa, Florida. 28% went to Littleton, Mass. I don't know if that's also a new retirement community, just like Florida is. Few people went to, right, maybe it's just one person, right? Florence, Italy. There's somebody in South Dakota, New Jersey. So interesting to see where people are going. So we get now to the question of diversity, equity, inclusion. Did you feel welcomed in your club? And the vast majority said yes. 89% did, but 11% said no. That's also a pretty big number if you consider that that should be really almost everybody should feel welcomed when they join a Rotary Club. And if they did not feel welcomed, we asked a follow-up question: why did you not feel welcome? And the largest number of answers we got was for other members did not make an effort to interact with me. So when you think about onboarding of new members, I don't know if some of your clubs still have this old checklist where everybody has to introduce themselves to the new member or pay a fine. That's one way to encourage that process. But really, it needs to be a mentorship process of how you include new members in your club and how you onboard them. And when we don't do that, then people don't feel welcome. One person said too liberal of a mindset and too politically active. That's interesting. One person said two very pushy members ran everything. And then we also have other diversity factors. Other members were mostly younger, one person said, and another person said other members were mostly older. So they probably came from two different clubs, not from the same one. But political views different from mine is something that is coming up twice, right? Once under the too liberal category and then in this other answer. And one person actually felt that other members were condescending to them. So something to think about. This goes to the question of how approachable is your leadership. Did you feel comfortable sharing concerns with club leaders? And 21% said no. And that's really a culture that we need to try to change. People should always feel comfortable being able to talk to club president and the board. Many people said they were not a member long enough to feel comfortable approaching club leaders. What does that tell us? Does that tell us that the president maybe didn't make an effort to speak to new members and engage with them immediately? Several people said club leaders had so many responsibilities and they didn't want to burden them. Some people said they don't want to be perceived as a complainer. Okay. And then we got write-in answers. Club leaders had their own agenda and were not interested in other ideas. The club leader was the one that was my concern. So who do you share your concern with if you can't go to your club leader? Members should know that they can come to the assistant governor for help. That's maybe something we need to also impress on them. So when it comes to leadership, obviously, one of the aspects is that we want to get new members engaged in the club and get them active in club projects and activities. And that's something where we actually got really positive answers. 95% said that they actually participated in club projects and activities. So I think that's a really good result. And on the question of how did they become involved, we have 50% who volunteered and 39% who were asked, and that's fine too, right? We got to get these club projects done. Some of the other answers that were interesting were told it was part of my job, or a company participation, or suggested by my company board member. Now we get to the satisfaction question. How satisfied were you with your club? and 45% were very satisfied, 42% said satisfied, 11% were dissatisfied, which is consistent with the other answers we got before, that 11% felt they had a problem and needed to leave. And when we asked them a follow-up question, why were you dissatisfied? The dominant answers come from lack of support from other members, personality conflicts, and time conflicts. And then we have a set of additional answers that some people wrote in. That include lack of structure, consistency, that include that new ideas were not being welcomed, or that the club had little direction. So some very interesting data points. And then we asked them about their feelings on various aspects of the club. So we said, how did you feel about the level of the club's involvement in the following types of activities? We asked them about membership development, member orientation, service projects, local and international, club relations, fundraising, the Rotary Foundation, and fellowship. And we gave them a choice of, was the club involvement excessive, adequate, insufficient, or were they not aware that the club even did something in that field? The not aware is especially interesting to see very large for the international service projects and for the Rotary Foundation. So that's something that probably clubs could address and tackle as a possible change to make members more aware of those things. Overall, the dominant answer was people felt that the club's involvement in these activities were adequate. And the insufficient or the larger insufficient bars we get on membership development, which goes to the topic also of membership orientation. So that's something that again speaks about the question of, does your club have an onboarding process? But also about club public relations. So something to think about. And I don't know who wrote that they felt fellowship was excessive, but we got some answers for that too. Must have been before the pandemic, that's for sure. So we then asked, how do you feel about the following additional costs associated with membership? And again, had three categories: excessive, reasonable, or inadequate. And the cost categories we gave them were club dues, the cost of weekly meetings, the amount of club fines or assessment or happy dollars, whatever they are called, voluntary contribution to service projects, and voluntary contribution to the Rotary Foundation. Vast majority of people found all of those to be reasonable, but I want to point you to the area where people, or at least a larger group of people, said it was excessive, and that's the cost of weekly meetings. Those have, of course, gone down now in the last year because we all met on Zoom and didn't have our usual lunches or dinners or breakfasts. But when you return to a hybrid or an in-person model, I want you to think about that bar here that several members who left wrote on the reason for why they left: financial constraints. And the cost of weekly meetings is definitely one factor that comes up more than any of the others. Then we asked them about different aspects of the weekly Rotary meetings that they attended. The amount of Rotary content, the length of the meetings, the fellowship activities, and any club bulletin, newsletter, or similar documents sent out by the club. And again, the vast majority said it was all adequate. The insufficient part, we got some answers for the club bulletin, newsletter, as well as fellowship activities. And the excessive answer we got sometimes for the length of our meetings. And we probably all have sat through a Rotary Club meeting that went beyond time because it started late, and then lunch ran over, and then the speaker talked too long, and then suddenly it was a 2-hour meeting and everybody tried to leave quietly. So something to keep in mind as we return back. I think with Zoom meetings right now, we are very, very efficient with our meetings, But as we transition to hybrid and to in-person, that's something to keep in mind. And interestingly, in the overall question, did you enjoy the weekly meetings? We had 14.8% who said no. So that's a surprisingly large number. So we asked more detailed questions about those club meetings, and we gave them choices again for the top 3 answers as a multi-choice, and then an other answer where they could write in something else. Our meetings were well organized, is what 86.4% said, so that's very good. But we also have this little slice here of poorly organized. I don't know the exact percentage because the diagram cut it out. And then there's somewhere in the middle, and then there's relaxed, informative, supportive. Somebody said they went to morning meetings. I don't know if that well organized or poorly organized, but that's what they did. And then we asked them about the meeting date time. And this is, again, something that we need to consider as we go back to in-person and or hybrid. 28.4% said the meeting date time was inconvenient. And when you think about, is it something that your club can change? Don't just think in terms of, oh, we have so many members who would never want new meeting time. Think of adding it to the existing meeting time, right? If you're a Thursday lunch club, do a Tuesday dinner happy hour once a month and see how many people show up for that. Or if you are a morning club, have an option for an afternoon meeting at some point in time once in a month, just to give people different options or ideas. And then we get to the suggestions for change. And I don't want to read all of them to you because that would probably be a boring course of the rest of the evening, because we have a couple more slides with these suggestions, which is why I'm going to share the detailed results with all of you later on. But 2 or 3 of these answers all had to do with the meeting time, right? You got meeting time and travel time, meetings without the meal, fast and less dollars. You have a 30-plus year member who sold his practice and then suddenly couldn't make the 12:15 meeting anymore and left the club. We have meetings run from 7:30 to 8:30, which works for everybody except me. So the time of the meeting came up over and over and over in the suggestion for what could be changed. That's why it's such an important factor to think about and to talk about. And then there's the diversity that comes up a couple of times, right? The club will fold if it's all retirees. Well, we need to potentially think about, again, different meeting times when we want to have a different demographic involved. Meeting location, interestingly, was not as important as the meeting date time as a factor for people. Only 4.9% said it was an inconvenient location. And when we asked as a follow-up question, what did you find unsatisfactory? The answers were traffic, too far from work, or it kept changing locations, which I don't quite understand as an answer. But we only got 4 answers, so it's a very small segment of the pie. But traffic and distance seems to be the two big ones here. Then we asked them, what could we change to improve the club meetings? And again, gave them a couple of options to pick from, and then a space to write in additional answers. The 2 highest numbers of responses we got were for increased variety of topics and more service opportunities. Those are the 2 biggest impact changes that the people who left us thought we could improve. Number 3 in the ranking was better speakers. Number 4 is more focus on fellowship, better time management. And then we get to an increased emphasis on vocational information, more involvement of families, and more leadership opportunities. And if you look real quickly over the additional write-in answers, again, the reoccurring topic is meeting days and times, early morning, etc., etc. So the date and time of the meeting comes back over and over again. Then we asked them how their spouse felt. And 57% said they were proud of their involvement in Rotary. And then we got a couple of answers for they didn't want to know more or be involved. They felt it was too expensive. They felt it took too much time, and a couple of write-ins. But I think overall, the fact that 57% said that their partners were proud about their involvement in Rotary is a very positive number to take away. Then we asked, is there anything the club could have done differently to meet your needs? And a large number of the answers were nope. It was all their time and work commitments or other similar answers. But the second highest answers, again, dates and times, flexible in dates and times, the opportunity to have morning and evening meetings. And then for the rest of the answers, I will leave you to read those when you get the final document. And we're almost at the end of the slides, so bear with me for just a few more minutes. We then asked them, would you reconsider or consider returning to your old Rotary Club as a virtual member, since most meetings are now on Zoom? And 60% said no, but interestingly, 12% said yes, and 28% said maybe. So this is something that is really important for us to keep in mind as we move back to a hybrid and in-person format. There is a potential to regain members as virtual members. And I know in my own Marblehead Rotary Club, we have a member who moved to Florida and couldn't find the Rotary Club there, who she liked. So she rejoined our club this past year. So just something to keep in mind as you make the transition out of the pandemic. Okay. And with that, I think I've talked enough. I'm going to give you 3 possible questions that you can discuss in your breakout sessions, but that's not supposed to limit you in any way. I think in the breakouts, we can tackle this any way we want. The 3 possible questions are, did you hear something in these answers tonight that you have previously heard when a member left your own club? Is anything echoing a prior experience you've had? Another possible question is there one takeaway that you can bring back to your next club or board meeting from these answers tonight? And then one other answer that you could look into is there one thing your club could easily do or change to address one of those reasons that we've heard tonight? So with that, I'm going to see, we got 20 people.